All right, so hello everyone. My name's Jesse and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. Today I'm really excited to bring in another fantastic speaker as we continue our high school STEM careers series, highlighting some really cool careers, some really amazing people, and how you can get involved in those if you are so inclined. So we are joined live in Montreal by Dr. Nathalie Ouellette, and she is going to highlight all her cool work in astronomy and astrophysics that she gets to do with an awesome presentation. So thanks so much for joining us, Nathalie, and let's dive in.
Thanks for having me. So I'll talk a little bit about what I call my Astro Journey. And if there's anything that's left out, Jesse can ask me afterwards. And you can always contact me. We'll give some contact information at the end. I'm always happy to talk to people who are interested in diving into this field. So this is a little bit about my academic and career path, sort of formally, without all the nice stories. I always knew that I wanted to be a scientist, and astronomy was always a strong contender, but I made sure to always get as much science as I could throughout my academic path. So I did lots of science in high school, and then when I went to CEGEP, which is this weird thing in Quebec that's between high school and university, I did something called Science, Letters, and Arts, which opened up all the different paths in university, so I could take basically anything that I wanted. And then I did a physics degree at McGill University for my bachelor's. And I immediately, as soon as I could, I did research during the summers with real astronomers who worked at McGill University. So that's something that was really important. Try to get as much research experience as you can as early on. And I studied really interesting stuff related to galaxies a lot. And I love galaxies. I wanted to study them, and I wanted to study some that were a little bit closer to what I was doing before, which was the high redshift universe that's really far away. So I went to Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario for my master's and my PhD, where I studied galaxies. And then afterwards, I really loved astronomy, but I also realized I loved science communication and telling people about space and science. So I got a job at a new institute called the Arthur B. McDonald Canadian Astroparticle Physics Research Institute, or just the McDonald Institute for short. And I was their very first communications, education, and outreach officer. So I built their entire education and public program. But it was sort of space related, but also related to particle physics, which was really cool. I learned lots of new stuff, but I really wanted to go back into space. So I finally got a job here in Montreal at the Institute for Research on Exoplanets. I'm also working with the Canadian Space Agency, and I build all of their public programming, but I'm also the outreach scientist for a really cool mission called the James Webb Space Telescope, which I could talk a little bit more about later. So one thing that I can talk about in terms of choosing this career path is that I had a family environment that was really good for that. I was lucky enough to have both parents who were engineers. My mom, she builds planes now. My dad is retired, but he used to test composite materials. And so I had really strong role models, both male and female. So I never really had this notion that, women can't be good at math or science or engineering, because my mom was like a really fantastic engineer. And so I was in this environment that was really pro-science. We read lots of books. I watched a lot of documentaries at home. And so I became like really interested in science, and I had like a really long phase where I was obsessed with reading about natural disasters for some reason. But it really got me interested in nature. So I know that if I didn't end up studying space, I would have ended up studying volcanoes or tornadoes or hurricanes or something. So what I really thought was fascinating about astronomy is trying to understand how these huge natural phenomena worked. And these are things that are like lot bigger than humans. So it's like something that is beyond what humans could ever really control. So I thought that was really fascinating. So I mentioned one thing that was really important for me is to try to get research experience as soon as possible. And that's what I did when I was doing my bachelor's degree at McGill University. My first summer there, I did research with a professor called Gil Holder, and he was a theoretical astrophysicist. That means that he didn't actually study galaxies from pictures that he took. He built galaxies inside of computers. So I helped him build galaxies and entire little universes inside of computers during that summer. So that was really, really cool. And one thing that I learned at that point was that computer programming is super important in modern astronomy. So a lot of people think that we spent lots of time at observatories looking through telescopes, but most of our days are actually spent on a computer writing computer code that can study and analyze the pictures that the telescopes are taking. So if you can learn programming as early as possible, that's something that I really, really strongly suggest you to do. And it's actually really cool. It's like learning a new language, essentially. You're like talking to your computer in this new language that you're learning. After that first year in research doing building galaxies, I decided to look more in observational astronomy, and I worked with Professor Tracy Webb, who still works there at McGill University, and she studied very, very far away galaxies that were like close to when the universe started. They're called high redshift galaxies. And that was really cool. But I thought it was a little bit frustrating because the galaxies I would observe and study were like little dots of light. I didn't really get a whole lot of detail. So I wanted to continue studying galaxies for my graduate work, but get some nicer pictures of them. So I ended up going to Queen's University, as I mentioned, and I worked with Stéphane Courteau, and he's still professor there, and we still work very closely together. And I got my PhD finally there in 2016, which I can't believe is already 4 years ago now. So we had a long working relationship, and it was really, really cool. And while I was there, something that was really nice is that I was also the coordinator of the Queen's Observatory. So that meant that I was in charge of all of the public programs and all the school field trips that would come through the observatory and our open houses. So I got to learn how to communicate about science as well. One of the really cool perks about being an astronomer is that you get to travel a lot. So this year, not so much. I had some cool trips planned, but hopefully I'll be able to start picking them back up in a few years. But we get to travel to telescopes every once in a while. And these are at really cool exotic locales around the world. So this is me in New Mexico and also in Chile, visiting telescopes that I ended up using to take pictures of galaxies to study them afterwards. And you also get to go and meet new people in new places, and not only to go to telescopes, but also for conferences. So that's me in Chile again. I also visited Oxford University in the United Kingdom. I've been to the Canary Islands. I've been to Hawaii. We took a little bit of time at the beach, but we also, went to the actual Mauna Kea mountaintop observatories where we visited all the different telescopes. So my research, what I end up doing is studying how galaxies evolve. So galaxies are these groups of stars and gas, and they're all gravitationally bound together, and they tend to hang out in big groups. So galaxies evolve, but they don't only evolve alone, they also evolve together like sort of a herd of elephants, I like to give as an example. So they interact with each other as well. So I study a group in particular called the Virgo cluster, and I study how the different galaxies interact with each other to see how they evolve through time. So that's the research that I do. But what ended up as a side gig for me in science communication ended up turning into a career. So now not only do I get to do that research, but I get to do media interviews, and I go on TV, and I lead viewing parties, and I give talks. I actually helped build a visitor center at Queen's University for the McDonnell Institute that I talked about. So we get to do all these kinds of really cool things. And now that I'm in Montreal, I get to build all of this huge programming for the public, for the James Webb Space Telescope, which is going to sort of be the successor to the Hubble Space Telescope. And I'm the bridge between the public and the scientists in Canada for this mission. And I also get to head all the public programming and the educational programming at IREX, the Institute for Research on Exoplanets, where we try to discover these new world exoplanets, which are these worlds beyond our own solar system. So they're orbiting stars other than the sun, and potentially they might harbor alien life. So I get to do all that really cool stuff. and on top of doing my own research. So if you're curious and passionate about understanding the universe, astronomy is a really, really great potential career.
Fantastic, man! That was cool. I want to change my career right now and come join you. That was awesome, Natalie. By the way, that was the best, most colorful PhD outfit of all time.
I know, right? It's so good.
That was awesome. And by the way, the backup of like studying epic volcanoes and twisters and stuff, we cover a lot of those topics in our program in general. That is a great other career. We'll have to do like a back-to-back with your session and another one just to cover that. You answered most of the questions that I wanted to ask, which is fantastic. What a cool presentation. But let's dive in with a few. So is there you're so passionate about all you get to do. Is there a most exciting or fulfilling part of your role that you can share with us?
I'd say that any kind of sort of, it's sad to say now, but in-person interaction that I get with people, especially younger kids, when I have young girls come up to me and say that like they're super interested in potentially becoming an astronomer, and how do you do that? And I can see the same kind of passion I have in these kids, and I can see that what I was talking about in my presentation to them really sparked some of that interest in them. So I feel like I'm making a small but important difference in the world. And I think astronomy, I like to call it a gateway science, just because everybody loves astronomy. You know, it's not a controversial science, but you know, it can be the sneaky way to get people interested in science in general. And so I hope that through astronomy, I can make society and Canada and all Canadians more scientifically curious and literate and science friendly. So that's what I really like, connecting with people individually.
Nice. What a fantastic answer. It's been really fun doing these interviews because almost everyone's favorite part of their job is connecting with people, and it just makes it so exciting to get to do what we get a chance to do and highlight such amazing people and all the cool jobs that are out there. So on the flip side of this coin, if someone was in high school now and they were contemplating your role, is there something that you tell them, given your experience doing this for many years now, to say, okay, just consider this, some sort of a drawback or a challenge or something that people should consider before they enter into this role?
Yeah, definitely. So astronomy is very connected with the academic world. And academia is a very old, very traditional, sometimes a little dusty place to work and live. And it doesn't always have the greatest work-life balance. It doesn't always offer as much room to live outside of your work as some would like. Luckily, that's changing a lot. And part of that is because the field is diversifying. Astronomy has been and remains still a very male-dominated field. And for a long time, men didn't have to worry about, you know, the household so much. But now there's more women and there's more men who have to like have their fair share of chores at home. Yeah. And so it's allowing for more room for work-life balance, but it can be a little bit of a hard place to exist because it does tend to take over your entire life, essentially. Yeah. If it's something you're passionate about, it's a gift and a curse, but you really have to sort of be like all in. You can't sort of be half in astronomy. It's hard to be only halfway in.
Yeah. So a quick follow-up on that, you mentioned talking to little girls and that being a really fulfilling and exciting thing for you. Are you finding that young people coming into astronomy, either academically and sort of directly under you as PhD students, or as kids, are more diverse now? Like, is this a thing that's changing in astronomy in a big way that you're actually noticing as a professional in the field?
For women, it's definitely changing, especially at the undergraduate and graduate level. So we do have a problem in STEM in general called the leaky pipeline. And so you try to get these girls at a very young age and you want to sort of like navigate them throughout the whole system so they can become professors if they want to become professors or, you know, senior positions. But there are several places along that pathway where a lot of girls fall out. And now it's pretty good all the way through undergrad and graduate school. A lot of graduate programs have nearly 50-50 ratios between men and women, but it can still get very hard for postdocs and senior positions. So there's still work to do there. And I have to say that we still have a lot of work to do in terms of visible minorities. So that's something that I hope a lot of more people are becoming more conscious of. And I hope this year is like a big turning point for astronomy, but for society as a whole, to be more conscious of those problems.
Well, fingers crossed, and it certainly looks that way. So I'm glad we got that message in. That's something that none of our other interviewees have mentioned, and it's something to consider as you enter into the career. And it segues really nicely into my last question, actually, which is if someone was in high school or in early stages university and they wanted to find out more about your roles like this in general, how they could learn more and really avoid that leaky pipeline problem, where would you send them to go?
So you can come and contact me directly or our institute. So it's exoplanets.ca. We try to have a pretty catchy website address. And so you can find out about our activities. We have a lot of public events where you can come and talk to us, ask us questions live. You can write us emails as well. The CSA also has a lot of really cool initiatives for students at different levels, or if you want to look at all the really cool science that they're doing, so you can look at the CSA's website. And we also have the Canadian Astronomical Society, or casca.ca, where we talk a little bit about what all of Canadian astronomy is sort of doing. And you can sort of get in touch with different astronomers that are scattered throughout the country. And so we're hoping to make that even more accessible to, the public, not only our inner community, but you can sort of have a good way to contact astronomers regardless of where you are in Canada.
Which is fantastic. I always like to highlight, though, in these and in our live broadcast, that scientists don't bite. You can usually find email addresses on websites, whether it's university or institute websites, and email them. If you're curious about a particular field or a topic that really you're super keen on, always reach out, and the worst you can get is no answer, and you're likely to get someone who's just as enthused as you are, willing to share.
Yeah, definitely. One thing that we do at IREX is career days. We used to do them in person for high school and CJEP students, but because we can't do things in person this year, we'll probably be doing them virtually, which will open it up to a wider audience. So if you're interested, contact us about our career days, and you could interact with our astronomers for a full day online, but still.
Outstanding. So between the resources you've highlighted, all this great stuff, and if anyone's watching, you can check out Nathalie's past sessions with us and future sessions coming on Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. And for now, we just really appreciate you joining us. Thanks so much for sharing your time with us today, Nathalie.